Got some big news, a 2020 alert. A DC insider now revealing the plot to arrest the entire Trump family, including the president. Before I get into that, if you're new here, tap the red button down below to subscribe and then hit that notification bell so you are the first to know when the latest news is published. Now, last week I sat down with Mark Vargas, the instrumental figure behind not one but two presidential commutations, former Illinois Governor Blagojevich and former Trump advisor Roger Stone. The link to the full interview is in the description below this video. Now, during the interview, I asked him why exactly this upcoming election is so important, not only for the future of our country, but for protecting America as we know it. And Mark Vargas dropped multiple bombs on career politician Joe Biden and issued a stark warning why he should never be president. He also exposed the left's plan to arrest President Trump and his entire family if he loses the upcoming election. Watch. You have connections in the West Wing. You talk to these high-level people every day. You know what's happening. You know the temperature of D.C. So how do you see this election playing out? Why does this election matter so much?
No, that's an excellent question. And we have entered uncharted times in terms of the political divisiveness in our country and the hatred of Donald Trump. You brought up an excellent point earlier. You know, the Democrats have been trying to impeach Donald Trump since the day after he was elected. And what's interesting is in the Washington Post, the day of his inauguration, January 20th, 2017, the headline in the Washington Post read, "The push for impeachment starts today." They've been after Donald Trump since day one. We've entered a new era of politics. But this
you bring up an interesting point, because the impeachment starts today. Impeach him on what? He hasn't even done anything yet. So the agenda was set.
The agenda was set. The fix was in. We want to talk about real collusion. The collusion was between the Hillary Clinton campaign and the administration of Barack Obama, FBI and DOJ and his intelligence agencies utilizing Clapper and Brennan and Susan Rice and so many others to undo a free and fair election and see the demise of Donald J. Trump, because he wasn't their candidate. He wasn't their guy. And they knew that Donald Trump was going to expose the corruption and peel back the curtain on how Obama and his team abused their powers to spy on his campaign and so many other things. But this is a lead into what's going to happen in November. And I think, besides the obvious, the political, that this is going to be this is about a 40-year Washington insider who's been part of the problem, not part of the solution, and now he's got solutions. After 40 years, now he knows how to figure things out.
I find that really interesting that suddenly Biden, he has been in office for 40 years. He's never brought forth any solid solutions, and now he suddenly has these solutions. But now we're also seeing him shift, like it's a totally different Joe Biden. You know, we have all these different connections and things to segregationists and actual racists and Klansmen and things that he said. The crime bill that he wrote and pushed
and bragged about
for many, many years. Suddenly he's the BLM's best friend. He's now talking about defunding the police. So being a Washington D.C. insider, how can somebody go and shift so much? Like, how does somebody make that jump in their head? It's complete polar opposite of who he was to where he is now.
It's what happens when you've been in Washington for too long and you're a career politician. This guy's never held a real job in his entire professional life. He was elected to the Senate at 29 years old.
Wow.
He's been living off the government since he was 29 years old. But this is what career politicians do. They can flip on anything and everything. It's stick your finger up in the wind and see which way it's blowing. That's how career politicians operate. But more than just socialism versus capitalism, the clear distinction between Donald Trump, whose creeds match his deeds, and Joe Biden, who for 40 years has been complaining about the problems, and he's been part of the problem, but now as a presidential candidate, he's part of the solution. And let's not forget that he's had 2 failed presidential bids, and he could barely hit 1%. But more importantly than that, this election is important because Donald Trump is exposing the corruption. The deep state is bipartisan. And I think that if Donald Trump doesn't win, you better believe that the SDNY and the Manhattan District Attorney, they want nothing more than to see Donald Trump and his family put in prison.
You really think that?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, what's to say that there's not sealed indictments already waiting for Donald Trump? And what we've learned is you don't have to commit any crimes because they can make them up. And we've seen this again. Go back all the way from Blagojevich to Mike Flynn to others. And these are just stories that have hit the news. I've spent the last 2 years working on criminal justice reform. There are men and women, predominantly African American, who are sitting in prison today for crimes that they never committed. And so that's the scary part, is the politics have become so destructive, that now you've got those on the far left that want nothing more than to see Donald Trump and his family in prison.
Well, I mean, they are willing to burn down America's cities. They're willing to prosecute police officers for defending monuments. We're going to get into some of those topics in a moment because this is where we are in the country. But it's a terrifying prospect to consider that President Trump and his family could be, in fact, arrested or indicted on something and then put in jail. I mean, I have heard chatter about these things. I never really took stock in it. I just thought it was just disgruntled people online talking about these things. But to consider that as an ultimate consequence of him losing is terrifying. Could you take us a little deeper into that direct threat?
Well, it's clear that the Attorney General in the state of New York is anti-Trump. It's clear that SDNY is anti-Trump. It doesn't matter. And this is true. Donald Trump could cure cancer, and the headlines would be Donald Trump lays off doctors. He could walk across the Potomac River behind the Lincoln Memorial in Washington, D.C., in front of the entire White House press corps, and the breaking news headline would be Donald Trump can't swim. It has become so divisive and so destructive. And what's happening is that he is exposing the corruption, the real corruption. And as a result, he's now a target and his family's a target. And they're going to want to he's been under investigation. Just think about this. His entire presidency so far, he's been in investigation since day one, and they're relentless. Rod Blagojevich, they couldn't convict him on the first trial. What did they do? They had a second trial. I'm convinced if they couldn't convict him in the second trial, they would have a third or a fourth or a fifth trial. When it's the United States government versus an individual, there's no chance for you. But again, I'm hopeful that Donald Trump will win re-election, and that this is a reality that we wouldn't have to face as a nation. But it is unthinkable of the power that these corrupt prosecutors and some of these folks within the FBI and DOJ.
Now, if President Trump loses in November, say goodbye to life as you know it, because America will never be the same again. Go ahead and forward this warning to your friends and family, and make sure you get out and vote in 2020. Comment below. We'll see you at the next report for the Next News Network. I'm Gary Franchi. Thanks for watching the Next News Network. Tap here to subscribe to the channel to get the latest news and alerts. Tap here to watch our latest breaking news and our top stories. Tap here for our latest featured interviews. And make sure you tap here to get in on the new podcast, the G-Cast, with my wife Angie and I. We'll see you at the next report for the Next News Network. I'm Gary Franchi.